in the region as well as globally. Then we're also joined by Mr. Tanveer Karamat Saab. He is CEO of Octopus Digital. He has worked a lot towards automations in different industries, especially textile industry. So he's highly focused business leader with demonstrated expertise in establishing and implementing growth strategies across operations, including sales, engineering, and marketing, especially in the textile sector. So before we delve into more policy-oriented debate or practitioners' perspective, let me just give you the basic textbook logic behind the concept of this particular plenary. When we look at Pakistan's economic growth over the last few decades, somehow, I mean, I am tended to believe that it's kind of a pure Malthusian economy, where sometimes we are stuck in the Malthusian trap. So in a Malthusian trap, what happens is that with a little bit of economic growth or a little bit of growth in per capita income, it is always followed by a growth in population. So basically, the overall growth, it is a function of your resources, your population, and the given technology. So the problem which lies in Pakistan's economy is basically from the Malthusian perspective is mostly that the resources, they kind of limit us in terms of progressing beyond a certain limit or threshold of growth level. So moving on from this Malthusian kind of economy, the recent growth models, especially the Schumpeterian growth models, they offer us a solution that how innovations and especially the creative destruction, how they can move an economy so that in such a way that it can outpace the population growth. So especially from a developing country perspective, this was pretty much the idea that we designed this particular plenary, that how we can proceed further. So now on this note, I'll give the stage over to Dr. Abid Suleri to further moderate and carry on, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, for another very interesting session, which to me is a continuation of our yesterday's session. Yesterday, one of our plenary was where we had Dr. Devarajan, the former Syrian economist of World Bank and now Professor Emeritus at Georgetown University, Washington. We had country rep UNDP. We had country director World Bank, and we have country director IMF. And we were talking of the resilience or the pathway for resilience in Pakistan's economy. Today's panel somehow get links to it. Yesterday, when we were talking about our challenges and our issues, one thing that was coming again and again in our discussion, that was finding some sort of financial cushion to achieve our development. Now, if I can repeat Dr. Devarajan's arguments, or Dr. Devarajan, he, by showing some numbers and graphs and everything for Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, he was of the opinion that both of these countries, they were in some sort of denial about their state of economy. And it is the cost of denial that they had to face. And then in question answer session, I was asking to both Esther as well as Najee, IMF and World Bank, that if that's the case, then what would happen to our sustainable development goals? So if we feel that Sri Lanka should have preemptively gone to IMF instead of delaying it and then defaulting, then what could have been the way forward? And if these reforms and macroeconomic stability, if it pinches at a microeconomic level, how to talk about SDGs. So on one hand, we have our climate change goals. On the other hand, we have our SDG goals. And on third, we also want to survive and thrive economically. Now, today's session is quite important in that context. If I just continue it as our discussion that we had yesterday. So today we will be talking of some of the way forward, what can be done differently. And of course, when we're talking of what can be done differently, it's a digital era, artificial intelligence, use of connectivity, and our speakers, distinguished panel, they would be elaborating upon it. But Yaya is here, and I was actually had a discussion with the UNRC. Yaya, and I reminded him what the UN Secretary General has been talking throughout for the last couple of years. So if I can rephrase some of his quotations, so he says that the multilateral development financial organization, they are failing world's poor. He's talking of these institutions failing the most vulnerable communities and countries. He has, during the floods 2022, he was quite vocal, telling that international financial system is not coming up the way it should have come to provide support to flood-affected countries. So I requested Yaya to, before we start the actual topic of our theme, if he can tell us that in these circumstances where we are being reminded that we are living in cost of denial and our debt is unsustainable, and we should go to IMF, and IMF tells us to withdraw most of the even targeted subsidies, what to talk of general subsidies, and raise more revenue. And in Pakistan's case, raising more revenue, meaning taxing the salaried classes and those who are paying taxes most of the time. So do you have any magic wand that we can achieve SDGs while sticking to IMF prescription? So if you can give us some sort of a way forward on how to enhance our resilience in this difficult time. And then I will definitely come to Dr. Ishrat Hussain Saab for his words of wisdom to take the argument further, how to link it with the technical innovation and use of digitalization. And then I'll hand over to Irfan to take it further, and I will have to hop off to another plenary where Dr. Adil Najam is telling us on climate change. So over to you, Yaya. You can either speak from there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can we put the slides on? They're on? First, I want to thank Dr. Suleri. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. My name is Mohammed Yahya. I am the UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator. Can I just tell you this discussions on what led to this presentation was Dr. Suleri was in my office and we were brainstorming about many issues about development and specifically related to sustainable development issues. Within that context, I wanted to do this presentation with his encouragement to put some of the basic evidence on how we achieve the sustainable development goals in the next 5 years. So you're probably wondering why the title starts with Let Pakistan Breathe. This is not related to Lahore, but we'll come back to the issue of what we mean by this. First is to tell you where the SDGs are. January will be 5 years before we are to meet the SDGs in Pakistan and globally. The figures here in Pakistan are not encouraging in terms of the challenges of meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. I don't want to go all of them, but I'll just give you some sense of where we are. Very few are on track or maintaining track. Most of them are around stagnating or moderating. and 17% is decreasing in terms of the goals. According to the IMF and UNDP as well, we need about 16% of GDP to meet the sustainable goals in the next 5 years. That is roughly about $54 billion focused on investing in the SDGs so that we can accelerate the SDGs in the next 5 years. Pakistan, at the same time, while it has no resources to fund the SDGs, will come back, it's facing increasing burden on debt servicing. Every year it's going up. Currently stands beyond 50% of the budget is going to servicing debt. This is just show you the debt burden. There was a figure from on the top, you'll see the country borrows around $147 million a day to fund expenditure daily. And the figures are ballooning, as you can see, overall since last few years. Here is just to give you a sense of, I wanted to focus specifically on external debt. Internal debt, we have a previous head of the bank here. He will tell you more about why that is much more complex to engage, but just for external debt to give you a sense of where those liabilities are. Now, this is if this pie was the Pakistan budget, this year's budget, 2024, 2025, to visualize it, this is what's happening. That is what goes to debt, and that's what goes to development on an annual basis. So in this context, how do we talk about sustainable development? Where is the resources coming from? And we were discussing with Dr. Suleri yesterday that in the best case scenario, if you have the growth that is being projected, will that growth be sufficient to both pay the debt and finance the SDGs in the next 5 years? So how do we finance the SDGs? I really think there's no way going around this. From our perspective, at least my perspective and my team's perspective, is the only short-term reliable way of financing the SDGs in the next 5 years is to have some form of a debt standstill. There's no other way in the immediate term until somebody in the debate here can tell us how the resources for SDGs will come for the next 5 years. Only immediate available tools is debt standstill. In that context, external debt saving will be around 90 billion on the next 5 years. And our projections are, if that money was spent well, this is the kind of improvement you see on key education, SDG outcomes: education, healthcare, wash, and energy. In addition, if you go through the major SDG outcomes on poverty, on good health, etc., I don't want to go through all of them, but just to give you a sense of the improvement, assuming the debt standstill for external debt of 90 billion is well utilized, then we see a significant shift and acceleration on those SDGs. Here is to give you an example on poverty: 10 million people out of poverty. Healthcare, more than 50 million getting access to healthcare. In education, increase of enrollment rates, 20-25%, etc., etc. So whenever we discuss any form of sustainable development, enhancing equity, when we talk about inclusion, there's no way going around it without financing. And if the country is heavily indebted, specifically paying more than 50% of its budget on servicing debt, we have very little room to be able to finance the country's needs. And growth in the immediate term, it may happen in 5-6 years, but in the immediate term cannot be sufficient to be able to cover both debt, both servicing debt and investing in development. Hence, we leave you with this quote. We really strongly believe that Pakistan needs a breathing space on debt servicing so that it can invest in its development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yahya, for suggesting an out-of-box solution, debt suspension or debt break for SDGs, so that Pakistan can actually invest in its SDGs, especially poverty, health, education, water and sanitation. I think this is something which echoes the Pact for Future. So if one remember that in September, in the UN General meeting of the future of Summit of Future, the Pact for Future is talks of this shared responsibility to achieve sustainable development goals, to take care of climate vulnerabilities, and to take care of debt-affected countries. And it specifically mentioned the debt climate change nexus. So the countries, they cannot invest in strengthening resilience in climate change because of their debt. And then if an emergency hits, a climate emergency hits, they have to borrow to tackle that emergency, and this vicious cycle, it continues. Now, that brings me to the scene setting remarks from Dr. Ishrat Hussain Saab. So Dr. Saab, Yahya gave you some thought-provoking idea. I know you will be talking of digital connectivity, employment, and how it can contribute to economy. And I know that given your vast experience and multidimensional experience, I would really also like to listen from you that if not this, and as it is the UNRC's position, it's not government of Pakistan's position. So I must give a disclaimer that it's not government of Pakistan which is asking for some sort of debt break. So do you see that we in Pakistan should build a momentum around some of the international commitments and some of the international pacts that are going on right now, so that even when we were talking of digital connectivity for agriculture and economy and textile, again, the major issue would be financing, how to finance it, how to bring more inclusive digital development. And that's where I would rely on your words of wisdom, Dr. Saab, if you like to join them. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, let me thank Abid for providing me this opportunity this evening to speak on a topic which is a futuristic topic rather than looking backwards. But because this is a panel, and I think the panel should bring in different perspectives so that the audience and the others can evaluate the strength of the arguments, I would very humbly submit that those who believe that throwing money after a problem or after an issue is a solution, I beg to disagree with it. I have worked on 50 countries for 20 years in the World Bank, and there we discovered that the incentive structure was how much money we have disbursed, how much money we have committed, but there was no linkage between what the money which has been dispersed and what are the outcomes of that money. We carried out, when I was the director of poverty in World Bank, we carried out a study in Uganda. $1 which was allocated by the central government, by the time it reached the school, it was only 9 cents. 81 cents of that money disappeared in the bureaucratic hierarchy of the central government, the provincial government, the district government, and many others. in the salaries and the perks and the benefits. I carried out a study of the Sindh government, of the Sindh economy, which has been published, and 95% of the educational budget goes for the teacher's salary. And the teachers are usually in the government schools absent from their duties. So there is no learning actually going on, and all the indicators of the quality of learning are very dismal. A fifth grade child cannot read a sentence from grade 2. Therefore, I very humbly submit that the multilateral institutions or others who emphasize the finance as the sort of panacea for all our problems do not realize that it is the governance, the management, the utilization of these resources and their connection with the actual outcomes, which I think is very important. Why did we gather this debt in the first place? Because the Neelam Jhelum project started with an allocation of only 50 billion rupees to be completed. It took 20 years to complete the project at the cost of 500 billion. And still today, one of the tunnels is not working, and we are not getting the full advantage of the electricity or water from the Neelam Jhelum. And I have a complete list of the development projects. People think, put money in the development projects and you will be able to get, you have a negative cost-benefit ratios because the costs go up and the benefits are foregone because the stream of the benefits now are much lower than what was envisaged in there. So that is my humble submission, that the underlying management of the resources, the governance structures, the accountability for results, and the efficient utilization of the resources is something which is missing in developing countries. And unless we put our house in order, any amount of money will end up in external and internal indebtedness. You trace the history of the indebtedness of Pakistan, it is because we are not collecting the revenues from those who are the beneficiaries of whatever development and growth has taken place, which is the 2% elite of this country. And we are imposing, penalties on our population. During 2001 and 2007, we had a local government system where the communities and the local villages and local districts were delegated 12 departments of the government: education, health, water supply, solid waste disposal, public transport, agriculture. And all surveys of the social audit show, and this is documented, that the level of satisfaction of a common individual, a common citizen, really went up because they realized that if they contribute to the taxes of their village or their community or the districts, they can see the tangible results which are visible to them. But when you ask them to pay and the money goes into a black box in Islamabad and they don't see any tangible benefits of that, the propensity to pay taxes is reduced. And this is an empirical evidence from Ghana to Guatemala. This is not peculiar to Pakistan. So here we have over-centralization in the federal government and over-centralization in the provincial governments. How can a secretary education of Punjab with 35 districts be responsible for thousands of schools all over Punjab? But a district government can do that because they are closer to the action and their span of control is very, very, robust. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, with due apologies to all of you and all of others who believe that just borrowing money and trying to pay this in the name of development is not a very wise strategy. We will just get more entangled in that trap. Now, coming to the topic of today, to me, technology is a tool, is a means. Like you have a pen which allows you to write. It is not an end by itself, it's a means. And the means is the technology can be beneficial for the mankind, or it can also be disaster at the same time. How to create the environment where the benefits are maximized and the costs and the damages are minimized is a challenge for not only for the public policy makers, but for all those who are indulging in the spread and dissemination of technology. I would submit that the pessimism about technology is highly exaggerated. I remember President John F. Kennedy in 1960, when computers were just taking over, saying publicly that the computer revolution will increase unemployment and deepen poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, those concerns were totally misplaced. US created millions of net new jobs, and mass technological unemployment did not emerge. The unemployment ratios remained 3.5%, and technology have improved the quality of life, not only in the United States, but the rest of the world, in form of higher life expectancy, better health, and better education, cars available, telephones, modern medicine, modern gadgets, and the supply of educated workers has risen sharply because more people went to college and the skill premiums really went up. So how do we foresee for Pakistan specifically the benefits of the AI and the emerging technologies? And before I give my own suggestions for deriving the maximum benefits while minimizing the damages and the pernicious effects, let me remind this audience that one of the reasons China has emerged as the second largest economy in the world is not because of natural resources. It is not because they have something extraordinary as far as their own, development paradigm is concerned. By 2000, the number of STEM graduates in China, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, was half of that of the United States. By 2010, China and the US were producing the same number of STEM graduates. By 2022, China is producing 3 million STEM graduates, and the United States is producing only 840,000. According to an Australian think tank, out of 25 technologies in the world which are emerging technologies, China is leading in 22, and the United States is leading in 3. Everybody was condemning China after Paris conference because they were great emitters. The whole revolution of the solar energy and the batteries, which have brought down the prices of solar energy, not only in China, but all over the world, are a result of the efforts of the Chinese scientists. 50% of the PhD candidates in science, engineering, mathematics, subjects in the top US universities are occupied by the Chinese students, who all then go back. So it is this context where I draw my inspiration from the Chinese that I would like to propose, Mr. Chairman, my whole agenda for the nexus between talent and technology. If you don't have the talent, the technology will elude you. Therefore, this nexus, how to deploy technology, requires talent. Number one, invest in research and development in agriculture, in industry, in energy, and in all those areas, private, public, academic, defense, wherever it is, so that you have new innovations suited to the requirements of your own country. We have PhDs coming in from outside. They have done a PhD on a particular topic in a country, and they want to come and extend that. There are huge problems Pakistan is facing, and they are not really doing anything in order to solve the problems of the country. Number two, encourage Pakistani diaspora to collaborate with the Pakistani researchers in education, health, agriculture. There are very fine Pakistani scientists who are doing excellent work in US, in UK, in Australia, and Canada. But when they come here, they are resisted by the incumbents. They are not allowed to collaborate. The name of the game is collaboration. Number three, send Pakistani scholars and researchers to top universities, academically advanced countries. Give them scholarships. Don't give the scholarships to soft subjects in second-rate universities, which is happening in most of our scholarship programs. People just want a thappa that this is a foreign degree, not realizing what is the content of that particular degree. Number four, upgrade your scientific labs in schools, colleges, and universities. When I visit many of the colleges and universities, there are no labs of science or the computers. We have to invest in that in order to take advantage of technological revolution. Then undertake a massive program of recruitment, training, and continuous upskilling of teachers in science and maths. You know, when I started my educational career, I was in chemistry. And at that time, even in a university like Sindh University, we had faculty members trained at Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Today, when I survey, there are no PhDs from these top universities in our science and engineering subjects. That is a gap that we are falling behind what the rest of the world is doing. Number six, grant liberal scholarships to talented students to pursue degrees at the top universities of the world. And like China, give them the incentives to set up their own labs, which Korea also did, and give them the freedom to carry out their research on the problems focused on Pakistan, not on any other esoteric subjects. Set up science parks, science museums that encourage interactions between young students and the objects of their curiosity. Unless you have curiosity among your younger generation, the creativity, the critical thinking, rather than just memorizing the material and reproducing at the exam, this country is never going to absorb or assimilate technology for the greater good of the country. Number eight, promote technical and vocational and skills training by bringing in the private sector. The government doesn't know what the demands of the private sector are, but if you make them partners in the delivery of the technical and vocational training, these people will have marketable skills and will fill in the gaps which exist in the economy. Number nine, provide incentives to the industry to set up apprenticeship schemes for young graduates. I had the fortune of heading one of the oldest public university in Pakistan, the IBA Karachi, which was set up by Wharton School of Pennsylvania. And my fourth year students were required to spend whole year on experiential learning attached with a company to solve the problems of the company. And they were examined not by my teachers, but by the supervisors of that company who were looking at those projects. And these young men and women got jobs right away because they developed the skills which were required by the industry. Number 10 is industry-academia collaboration. The academia is going in one direction, producing graduates, and industry is complaining that they cannot find the right fit for their own jobs. So bring in industry and academia together in order to collaborate and prepare your manpower for skills. Pakistan has youth bulge. Japan, Korea, and many other countries in Europe are going to face a deficit as far as their manpower is concerned, and they are prepared. A country like Japan is prepared now to open the doors for the foreigners to come and work in their country. This is a good opportunity for us to follow this agenda and prepare our young men and women, both for the domestic markets and domestic economy, but also for international economy. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for highlighting the importance of technology and employment. Jodanka, I will have to keep you on hold. I know it must be over your lunchtime now for another 5 to 7 minutes. But before I go to the climate change panel, I really want to listen from Yahya. Yahya, it's a panel and it's a discussion. So Dr. Saab gave a very convincing arguments about why we have to bring our house in order, and I agree with him in totality, but that we have to have our house in order. But I again go back to your argument of providing Pakistan some breathing space, and I was wondering if you like to elaborate more upon your solution. I think because I told you it's only 5 to 7 minutes, so due to paucity of time, you made it over simplistic. So will you like to take another 5-6 minutes to respond? You can come here so that all the...
Oh, you want me to? Okay, no, I was going to respond.
Because
okay.
it's some of the...
Okay. So just to say, there is a global commitment. The issue is really not to say financing alone works. So but financing is a big part of it. The country has 26 million children out of school, about 20 million people stunted. Of course, institutional efficiency, governance structures play a role, but financing does as well. So for us here, the argument is not to say only financing is needed, absolutely not, but financing plays a key component for teacher training, for investing in healthcare, for maternal health. You need money. The idea that Pakistan keeps on sending a lot of money out through debt servicing when the needs are most internally, here the issue is not to say that Pakistan should not pay its debts or Pakistan should not meet its liability. The argument here is, can there be a pause while we have globally committed to the SDGs? The international community has sat down, have agreed that there are these goals that we have to meet, that we have to invest in. The international community has met again in New York in this September through the Pact of the Future, and debt stress has been identified as one of the key impediments for development outcomes. Can we discuss that among other things? So it's not to stop other things, as the professor pointed out, but it's more to say where does the money come from for Pakistan to meet its sustainable development goals? And for me, having some form of standstill doesn't mean forgiving. That's a different debate and discussions that the government can have. But the idea here is to say, well, forgiveness could be one of the options. Very recently, there was an example in the DSSI, for those who follow this date, with the Paris Club, after the 2020 COVID, the international community got together and said, at least specifically for the Paris Club, that they will put standstill for the date, and it just expired, and Pakistan saved within that period 3-point-something billion. So these mechanisms exist, and I think for us, the servicing sustainable development goals in the next 5 years will need creative solutions. And I do not think putting all the eggs on the concept of growth that will create the level of resources to be able to finance it will be difficult. But I'm in no way disagreeing that governance and other issues play a role. But for us, the financing part needs to be urgently thought through. And then the international community has a role to play in finding solution to those gaps. Otherwise, colleagues, we can discuss as long as we want about investment in green energy. We can discuss as long as we want in many areas. If there's no resources through government, then it'd be very difficult to find the solutions that we're seeking. So this is the argument here. It's not an either or, it's all of the above, but financing plays an incredible important role.
Thank you, Dr. Yahya. So it's not either or, it's and of course, we need to focus on both ends, improving the governance, institutional efficiencies, but also mobilizing finances, for which Dr. Yahya is proposing something like this debt service break, so that we can keep on working on our SDGs. I know this is a topic where we can have this bilateral discussion forever, but I'll hand over to Irfan Chatta for our online colleagues and Dejang, who is sitting here to take it further. Over to you, Irfan.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Jodenka, I'll come straight to you. Can you hear us? Is he online? She's not online? How about Tanveer Saab? Tanveer Karamat Saab, so can you hear? Okay, I can see Dr. Jodenka. So coming to you, Dr. Jodenka. So you heard all the discussion. I mean, there were multiple perspectives. Now I would like to hear your perspective, especially given your vast experience in digital transformation initiatives, especially you worked with ADB in Pakistan, trying to figure out that what are the digital trends in the region as well as in Pakistan. What is your view that how intelligence and adoption in traditional sectors, especially textiles and agriculture, because they are kind of a backbone of our economy. I mean, the major theme of our discussion is about the role of digital transformation in economic growth. But since agriculture and textile, they make the major part of the economy, so I would like to hear your feedback on that as well. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to join you from afar. And as a disclaimer, I would like to share with everyone, I'm not an agronomist, nor am I a textile sector specialist. So this is just but I have worked in different countries, and it's very interesting, how countries make strategic decisions, which sectors to grow. And I think this is particularly important, or maybe salient for Pakistan. As was mentioned, I was involved together with SDPI and ADB in the digital diagnostic study that we just completed in July, and there was a launch. And there I was able to gain sort of a bird's eye perspective. I mean, we were also in the provinces, on the ground, seeing how digital transformation is evolving and where it's at. So that was the purpose of the study. And there were some couple of things that jumped out sort of immediately at me. And maybe it is in this context that I would like to share some observations. So they're mere observations from a practitioner that has worked in different countries, and how to actually approach digitalization. It's costly, it's competitive, it's moving super fast. So how countries should make strategic decisions with, as was mentioned, the resources that are often scarce, and tech tends to be resource heavy. So one thing, I'm really glad that you identified these two sectors, because countries that have made it have either focused on value adding in high growth impact sectors economically, which is great that you have identified textiles and agri. There's a tendency in digital transformation to go tech. While that's important to advance it and rapidly grow it, it's also interesting where could be strategic and meaningful plugins to existing industries. Countries that have done it well, and not only in the north, but also in the southern hemispheres, have greatly benefited. And I think maybe this is the purpose of the panel. How can you reflect on your strongholds in Pakistan, which you have many, including the textile and agri, as well as obviously the tech sector is super hot and very exciting. But how can you optimize and grow it to make it competitive and make it shine? And also you get a return on your investment when government and private sector invest in it. So, I mean, in terms of Pakistan, what I have noticed, or that there tends to be fears, where we saw that you have special technology zones. So one thing is to building on what you already have, and not, starting, mega big projects. I mean, those are also important, but also building from what is and adding value to it. When we kind of bounced off, we didn't hear anything on automation in textile industry, adding value in your creative industries, that feed into the, for example, textile industry, patterning, design aspects, which is huge now around the world. The creative industry space, it's extremely value adding for fashion and sort of textiles, apart from the let's say manufacturing aspects of it. But when we mentioned this, there was immediately, sort of like it got sidelined that there were fears of massive displacement of labor, right? That with automation, immediately there would be labor displacement. And how do you go about that? So one thing when one talks about digitization is, one thing is tech, but also how does one communicate digitization to offset fears, potential fears that can be beginnings of resistance to reforms, and to also work with phase-in approaches. Some industries are more, let's say, conservative or are more resource intensive in order to transform the entire industry. And, one could go, how do you go with heavy manually fueled sector to fully automate it? But there's also phased approaches, right? Where you could, in a phased manner, strategically set benchmarks to evolve a sector into full automation. So this would be one thing that kind of jumps out at me, is this kind of resistance when one talked about automation in your sort of more manually sort of heavy and labor-intensive sectors. So how maybe the thinking there could be how do you sensitize and communicate digitalization? This is typically a soft and often overlooked, but here what's important is to develop sort of illustrative business cases where things already have happened in Pakistan and also maybe in the region to make it more relatable. So this will be one side, offsetting fears and phasing in approaches. The next thing is, as I said, is value adding and stimulate focused innovation, sort of to offset production challenges, enhancing competitiveness, and only new in the sectors. Again, I'm not a specialist in the sector, and especially in Pakistan, you know where your strongholds are, where the missing links are. And also really important, apart from tech, is ease of doing business. How can you, through tech, sectorally ensure ease of doing business? For farmers or textile manufacturers to actual clients. So this is also value adding in a different set, indirect, value adding to your sectors is not only the production lines, but also the business aspect of it, right? You want clients, you can have state-of-the-art products, but if the clients are experiencing difficulties with making orders, payments, and that goes back to the sort of e-payments and fintech, which also Pakistan is very good at. So how can you leverage your assets already, your fintech industry, for example, which is very good and advanced? How can you then ensure that it's customized and tailored to your strategic industries, be it textile and agri in this sense? Good examples are, for example, in Kenya, which has I'm sure you're familiar, or maybe for those that are not, M-Pesa platform. So this is one key trend also in digitalization of sectors is platformization. So rather than having tons of small solutions, is integrating them into platform kind of one-stop shops. And Kenya and also India are maybe first kind of examples that jump to my mind that have done really interesting things in the agri sector. In Kenya, they're connecting farmers to the M-Pesa platform, it started as a fintech platform for mobile money in Africa, in particular in Eastern Africa. Now they're connecting farmers using that platform to tailor and customize financial services and market information. So access to real-time prices, on the markets, but again, not creating, a standalone solution, but integrating it on an established solution that's robust, but just adding a tailored service to that. In India, I don't know, I'm sure you're much more familiar, but there's a National Digital Agriculture Mission, which is a new project that's integrating also technology and farming practices, connecting particularly farmers with buyers, again, a platform approach. So that's something to, maybe introduce your farmers with, how to use platforms. Maybe that are not existent in Pakistan, maybe elsewhere, and start to adopt those practices. When it comes to innovation, that's another area. It's not only, somebody has to develop these things and new products and add-ons. So as the previous speaker, or actually the gentleman beforehand, was mentioning, growing talent, this is inevitable. I couldn't agree with him more. That you cannot do anything unless you grow talent. And this is focused talent, right? So these are specific sectors. Chances are that you're excelling in them, that you have already done something in your universities or technical institutes or colleges and vocational training institutes to do something right, to develop that into your stronghold, both in textiles and agri. So then question now is, again, how can you top up with digital? And how can you grow talent in specific areas, that where you would get a return on investment? There requires to be a little bit of strategic thinking, both by academics, government, and private sector. What areas those are. Nigeria, this is again going from the south. I can mention tons of examples in sort of northern countries that are like skyrocketing in terms of agri-tech and also textile. I mean, Italy and UK are some. But what is maybe interesting is also the southern countries who have started potentially from different starting points and how they got to places. And for example, Nigeria has a strong agri-tech hubs, throughout the countries. They're fairly decentralized. So this is also interesting. How can you also decentralize your innovation and not only having them maybe just in Islamabad or Karachi or Lahore? I mean, it's important that those are pullers, but maybe how can you also decentralize, sort of nodes of talent growth throughout the country beyond just these three strongholds? So this would be another thing to think about. How can you decentralize also farm management software, supply chain sort of improvement, and access to financing? Now, this is the third thing, access to financing, right? For innovation to happen and to be absorbed, for it to be absorbed into innovation ecosystems, you need money. And again, this resonated very well through previous speakers who spoke, is, the financial instruments also. So innovation tends to be costly. So how can you also ensure that, companies that do want to innovate, that they actually do have access to the means to innovate, talent-wise, but also financially? So are your banks, apart from fintech solutions and like e-payment systems, are there actual financial instruments to incentivize innovations in companies and high growth sectors? So this is another thing that should be thought about. And then last thing is data analytics. There's some really powerful ways how data is being used to manage both textile and agri sectors. To capture data from various sources, from raw materials to machines, workers, sort of labor practices, customers, suppliers, etc. So the whole value chain. Data analytics is critical to make, again, optimized solutions and strategic solutions and getting that return on investments, minimizing sort of costs of production and enhancing competitiveness. So, for example, also radio frequency identification is really growing fast in supply chain management. So tags or QR codes, how do you track and identify products throughout supply chain, and using e-commerce platforms, another one, to market the goods. So there's a whole slew of things, but I think before then it's kind of a cascading strategy. How do you go from these macro points and then start to deep dive and start creating sort of micro enabling, let's say, solutions within them? So I think these would be my sort of three kind of words of wisdom for Pakistan, for the two sectors, to summarize, to offset fears and work maybe with phasing, and also how do you communicate that to the sectors, so to offset those fears and potential resistance, going from manual to digitization and automation. Second would be the value adding and stimulating focused innovation on these sectors. So really identifying competitive areas where your return on investment would be high, second. And lastly, building that sort of ecosystem, which is kind of a really big buzzword, where it's, targeted flagship programs, be it funded by the government, development partners, private sector, obviously, or a mixed sort of hybrid solutions there. Building on what is your special technology zones. I think there needs to be some additional soul searching. They're there, and there has been already a lot of thought put into that, but maybe how can you create also really topical, special technology zones, and starting to really invest into, sort of high growth sectors that you have identified. Upskilling, digital skills, as given that tech is moving so fast, from farmers or textile sort of manufacturers to also innovators. Government is not only those who are producing, but government needs to be sensitized equally so that it can make good decisions on how to spend money and how to target and tailor those flagship projects. And digital infrastructure, right? This is a big thing that came up in our diagnostics in the ADB is, a lot of these producers are potentially in rural or peri-urban areas. So how can we ensure, that digitalization is not only available with fancy solutions, but that they are actually able to use them through internet connectivity and also having those optic cables pulled all the way to urban and peri-urban areas. Sorry, rural and peri-urban. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It sounds like an agriculture economics. So, coming over to you have been interacting on this. You heard the macro perspective. You also heard the perspective from development partners. You are working at the ground level with the firms, with the company. You're helping them out how to automate. So what do you feel that what is the level of scaling up of technologies, in textiles and in the agriculture? Because you speak just over the next up.
Well, can you please repeat yourself because the voice was broken? I could not pick up the question. Was it targeted to me or to Dr.
So, as I mentioned that we heard the perspective of some macroeconomists here and also the development partners, and now I would like to hear your perspective from the firms and companies' point of view, because you deal with the firms. You have helped a lot of firms in automating. How do you see that? How are we doing in terms of scaling up digital innovations, especially in textiles and agriculture sector?
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me and being part of this August panel of experts. My name is Tanveer Karamat, and I'm the CEO of Octopus Digital. For 3 decades, I would say that we've been serving the industrial sector in different verticals with automation solutions and services. Right? We're an engineering company. And for the last 5 years, the digital transformation, which is a buzzword, everybody is talking about the digital transformation and Industry 4.0, but there's a very little understanding, I would say, in the industry what it actually means. So our approach, I would talk about in the context of how we are approaching the digital transformation to transform the companies in Pakistan. I will restrict myself to Pakistan because we are doing a lot of work outside as well. Our approach is very, very simple. What we do is we go through a discovery phase with our customer. And there is a little, if you look at it, there are different digital maturity within organizations. And there are companies who think that putting an ERP system is a digital transformation for them, or having any digital tool that they're using, maybe a Power BI dashboard is a digital transformation for them. And they're working in silos. They're creating a digital silos, which doesn't help because you add more problem than solve a solution. So our approach is very simple. We do a discovery session with the industry, with any customer, and we want to understand their pain points, their challenges, and what do they want to achieve. Of course, they have the knowledge of their operations. They know it very well. And then we understand the entire process, that what is in the production, what is in the IT space, how the data is connected, and so on and so forth. So we pick up a high impact use case out of the discussion that, okay, you can start with this and let's have a POC, or maybe you can have a pilot project, because once you have the flavor, only then you would expand and grow. So once we identify that, we map the solution, then we implement the solution, we set the objectives, and we deliver on the objectives. And then there is an implementation and adoption phase. When I say adoption phase, it is the most critical phase, because if the data or the and the KPIs and the dashboards that we deliver is not becoming part of the workflow of different personas within the organization, that remains a good to have piece and is never fully adopted. So it is very important that we make sure that whatever has been delivered sticks. And building on that initial success story, we then give them a roadmap of digital growth. So we start small and grow big. We start with the small intervention, digital intervention, but we give them a complete roadmap and how you would transform your organization by connecting all data pieces in real time. Because the biggest problem that we've seen here is that of the data accuracy. Because there are many human touch points where data gathering takes place. And once you let the humans gather data, that's anybody's guess how accurate would that data be. So we believe that data accuracy is very important. And what I mean by data accuracy, to ensure that this data is accurate, we connect the data directly in real time with the data repositories. So that takes away any human intervention. Then, and this also established the transparency of how the data is being captured. And once the data is connected, then we create a pool, which we call a single data repository on the cloud, which is called the data lake, so that you have a single source of data for all data sources. And once you have that, then you can use that single repository, whether it is a process data or production data or IT data. There is a convergence happening at that level. And then this becomes the raw material for any machine learning and digital twinning or subsequent prediction modeling that we do. So the point that I want to make here is that we ensure that the data is accurate, the data is transparent, and there is a single repository for all the users to use the data. And we make sure that all silos are broken, and we bring an integration of all sorts of data, which is very important for any digital transformation journey, so that you have an enterprise view to make informed decisions. We create insights through analytics. And once you have insights, you can improve your processes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just quickly go over to Dr. Cheng. Very briefly, Dr. Cheng, what do you think? You have been working in different countries. Can you give some very quick examples that how digital transformation, especially innovations in agriculture, they can contribute towards building the resilient economy? Because agriculture is also mostly hit by the climate change disasters as well. So any solutions, especially innovations that have been beneficial previously in your experience, can you please share those? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I will give, before start, I will give some background like information about the agriculture in Pakistan. So like the agriculture land in Pakistan is around 30.2 million hectare. And if you don't really know this number, then it means 47% of the national land is covered by this agriculture land. And 70% of the export in Pakistan is directly or indirectly based on the agriculture product. And Pakistan is export like a wide variety of like agriculture products, include the cash product like cotton, sugarcane, and as well as like fruit and extra. And the top export destination includes US, China, EU, and some Middle East countries. Actually, export is agriculture export in Pakistan economic charges very important part. And the ability for the country which can maintain or extend the world market share is depends on the country's ability to how much they can match the demand of the world trading system, right? And this depends, not only depends on the quality of the product itself, and also about the product safety. And for the back to the agriculture product, food security and SPS is two requirements under WTO and apply for the all WTO member states. And SPS may make some challenge for Pakistan agriculture exports. Why I say that? Because like SPS concerns the applications for the sanitary and phytosanitary measures. In another word, it means for the food security and animal and also plant health measures. So when Pakistan's agriculture product wanna try to access to the premium market like US and EU, the Pakistani standard is not match the higher stand in the global market. So how to like make the Pakistan agriculture export to match with the global standard? Then the digitalization tools can help at this part. Like the blockchain can the traceability and also the monitoring implementation can meet this requirement. For example, for the like fruit exporters, they can use the blockchain to verify and take the record for each step of in the supply chain and ensuring the food security and also the process, and make the transparency increase and also build the trust in the global market. And there is another example about how digitalization can help the trade aspect. If you remember, like when you go to past the immigration, so normally we will submit our like visa, right? But when you enter other countries, but before you apply visa, did you remember all the panic? Submit those kind of documents to the like consulate or embassy, and this is same happening to the like exporters. Like Normally, like most of countries, they are required for the paper document. And if there is even one category not correct, even the tick is not correct, like ticking the right box, then the government like authority will just return your application. So like for the exporters, they just will experience a lot of pain in submitting different like documents when they export like little amount of the agriculture product. And most of these exporters, I assume they are farmers, and their lack of information and also the knowledge in this part. So if we apply the digitalization like to this kind of tremendous documentary work, then the farmers can just use like one simple like device like mobile and submit all the documents. This will reduce the work for the issuing authorities and as well as for the exporter themselves. And it will reduce the time, and also it will help the climate change. So this is two examples, but digitalization, I wanna like highlight that the digitalization not only help make our life better, but also we are facing meanwhile, we are also facing some challenges. Like for farmers, most of devices like drones, mobile, and also sensors, they are very expensive and costly. And for the small, like in Pakistan, most of farmers, they are like smallholders. They cannot afford for that kind of money. And second, in the rural place, the urban, like city people, we enjoy the stable internet. But in the rural place, they always have some interruptions. So that is the second challenge. The third one is the literacy for the farmers. Because as Dr. Hussain mentioned, the education is important. Same, like digitalization education for the farmers, for the most I will say, vulnerable group, women, kids are also like very important at this stage. The last part I wanna see the challenge is the localization data. So most of like since we will apply for the generic like data source to like Pakistan or other countries, but that is lack of the localized and tailored data source, which means like Pakistan weather is not same like China, and Pakistan soil is totally different with other countries. So keep the localized data and keep updated is also very important. And I think for some challenges, we can, if we have challenges, then we will have solutions. Like for the literacy, I think we can get the help from the international organizations and also NGOs as well as private sectors, work with government together to build a concrete framework to help farmers from the finance, education, and also the other aspects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move towards some concluding remarks by Mr. Shiza Fatima. Just to give you a little recap, there were two major themes that emerged here. First is that how we are going to mobilize the resources for the innovations and R&D and digital transformation Secondly, the point was made about the labor displacements in the wake of automation. So there is a lot of talk about right sizing, even in the government as well. So we believe that another way to frame it is that there are some jobs which are becoming redundant or obsolete because of automation. So we would like to hear your perspective on that as well, that how we can make that whole right sizing debate with this automation and labor displacement. Over to you, Mr. Sir. Can you go to the stage, please, for Mike's mouth?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Abid Suleri Saab, Muhammad Yahya was here, Dr. Ishrat, Dr. Jordanka, I believe is online, Dr. Jing, Tanveer Saab, and all our respected guests, Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening. So from the conversations that I've heard, I believe there have been a lot of takeaways for us. And Pakistan, I'm not going to repeat everything that was said, but one thing that I think needs all the repetition is that Pakistan remains the 5th ranked country on the Global Climate Risk Index. And that makes us one of the most vulnerable countries in the world when it comes to climate change. So, and being a country with an agricultural backbone, that's the kind of volatility, because it's not only about economy anymore, it's about food security, it's about survival that we're talking about. So agriculture, when we talk about agriculture and agriculture-related industries, including textile, these are, for Pakistan, whether it's our local economy, whether it's our labor market, or it's our export. These two and other industries linked with agriculture are sectors that have, since the beginning, since 1947, I believe, and even before that, they've been the leading sectors in this region. So what is it that we can do? How can we use technology to create that resilience that would also then in turn make our economies resilient? For Pakistan, first thing that I would like to mention is, and I understand the challenges and the risks as well, as have been pointed out and highlighted by some of the speakers here. One of the first things that I want to talk about is Honorable Prime Minister's vision for national digitization. And the idea for national digitization is, I'm not going to go into the detail, but to create digital identities for every individual and create that digital public infrastructure that is required, which are, in simpler words, are the data exchange layers that formulate the basic data set of a country, and then create sub layers which would be sector specific. So we build the national data exchange layer where all data starts talking to each other. So for example, NADRA's data, SCCP's data, FBR's data, agriculture data, land records data, everything needs to be interconnected. And then the subsector, the substacks as you call them, their data comes in. So I'm not going to talk about the larger plan of economic digitization and digitization in governance and society, but if I just talk about digitization when it comes to agriculture, that is something that even within the digitization process is one of the first priorities that the government will be looking at. And when we say that we want to bring in digitization within agriculture, again, within itself, it's a very complicated and a complex concept. So when you talk about agriculture and its digitization, we're talking about multiple things. So for example, one would be, how do we understand the farmer? How does this digitization help us? So when a farmer, for instance, uses one of these, and we're going to encourage private sector and these young startups to really step in and take this role. So for example, we have certain startups that talk about the KYC of the farmer, right? So a farmer, if for instance, for a year uses a digital application, what can we gather out of it? We gather his or her lending patterns. We gather what kind of research, what kind of search they're doing. We gather the kind of, these are just examples, the kind of fertilizers that they're using. We gather what are the kind of certain diseases that their farm might be, susceptible to, and multiple things. When you digitize something, you're actually, the basic foundation is data gathering, right? So every action, every step that the farmer then takes is captured through data. And when you're doing it with millions and millions of farmers and over millions and millions of hectares of land, that's the kind of data gathering insights that then help you make informed decisions, and they help you really analyze the kind of so they help you. This kind of data really helps you make informed decisions, right? So once you have this data, then you have the heat maps, then you can have preventative care, then you have early warnings, then you can also find precise solutions. So that's the kind of digitization that we're talking about. Then comes the mechanization and automation and digitization of the farming practices themselves. Here we're talking about precision agriculture. We're talking about precision irrigation. We're talking about precision where and how much, for example, pesticides have to be used, how much fertilizer is to be used. We have young startups that have come with AI-based applications that tell you the nature and the structure and the composition of the soil just by taking a picture. And that helps you analyze what is the kind of external nutrient that soil, for instance, needs. So using technology, digitizing the journey of a farmer, digitizing the processes of farming itself is the kind of use of technology that is absolutely not only, it's no longer an option, to be honest. It's a need of the hour. And it's something that has, like I've said earlier, it's actually become an existential situation right now. So I can comfortably say that we have embarked on this national digitization journey where agriculture will be on one of the top priorities, and it remains one of the top priorities. For example, within the SIFC, which is the whole of the government approach, the agri sector has done some phenomenal work. So from GIS mapping of land to tracking the farmers, and they've really done some phenomenal work when it comes to agri-tech. That's the kind of work that we're pushing for. Similarly, from the Ministry of IT, we have one of our national incubation centers that works with startups in Festabad is focused on agri-tech. So some great agri-tech startups are coming out of there. So there's a collective effort and collective commitment to ensuring that agriculture, there's an understanding obviously that it's the backbone, but how do we ensure resilience? How do we ensure that given the huge challenge of climate change and the huge challenge of sustainability, how can we use and better use our resources and technology to ensure that our agriculture becomes resilient, and the industries related to agriculture bring that resilience within themselves that is required in this day and age. If I talk about some of the comments that I've heard, I would like to, absolutely agree with one of the speakers where he says that adoption remains one of the biggest challenges of digitization. And one step before that is awareness. So awareness is something that we need to talk about. And then one step even before that comes what Dr. Jing spoke about is accessibility. So accessibility to internet, accessibility to devices, accessibility to capital. In the absence of these foundational basic requirements, none of these bigger plans can work. So one solution when it comes to access to capital, for example, last year when I was the Special Assistant to Prime Minister on Youth Affairs, we have a long-standing, long-running Prime Minister's Youth Program that started back in 2013 during the tenure of Mia Mohammad Nawaz Sharif. And till date, it has disbursed over 100 billion rupees to young entrepreneurs on very easy installments and very easy conditions. But last year was the first year when we introduced under Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif loans for agriculture. So now it's Prime Minister's Youth Business and Agriculture loans. And 50% of the lending went to the agriculture sector. And one of the primary triggers was the floods that happened in 2022. So because a lot of land was lost, especially with the farmers, and you rightly pointed out that most of these farmers have a very small area that they're cultivating on. One flood means a lifetime loss of their, and also the future loss when it comes to their finances, economy, their sustainability and survival of their children. So that's where it triggered, and we that's the kind of access of, that's something, a very small part that we could put when it came to access to capital for farmers and agriculturalists, and we were able to disperse something around 30 billion rupees in that context. Then when it comes to access to devices, once again, we're coming up with smartphones for all policy, understanding that smartphone has become, internet has become one of the basic rights, and smartphone is your basic tool to access internet. So smartphone for all policy is now targeted to ensure that every individual in the country should be able to afford a smart device on easy installments. So the idea is that we ensure that the government does this microfinancing in partnership with telecom industry and with other relevant sectors. State Bank is a part of it. Banking sector is a part of it. So this is one policy that will be very soon announced by the Honorable Prime Minister. It was once again his directive to ensure that every young person, most of people in Pakistan are young anyway, so every person in this country should have an access to smartphone. So that's the second thing that the government would be doing to ensure accessibility to smart devices. And like I said, this would be the baseline, the very basic requirement of the national digitization. On top of this, when national digitization works, once the DPI is there, we'd be able to have the right kind of data that is required. And then comes all the conversation about that data analytics and using the data effectively to make informed decisions that would eventually lead to success of the resilience that we're trying to build. So these are some of the things that the government is trying to do, but there's obviously much more that needs to be done when it comes to, for example, satellite imaging, drone surveillance, IoT, sensors, rightly mentioned by Dr. Ying, especially real-time data on crop health, real-time data on the kind of crops that are growing in the country. What is its linkage with our export sector? What is its linkage with our national food security? That kind of informed data making would be very soon possible. And similarly, if we talk about the global dynamics around sustainability, the requirements that are globally coming up, we have a very, for example, we have a very big chunk of our agriculture export going to Europe. So with EU's new policies and ESG and requirements regarding sustainability, it would now become absolutely essential for our agriculture sector to really come up to the mark in terms of quality, in terms of traceability, if we want to continue to export our agriculture products. And here comes technology once again mentioned by Dr. Ying regarding blockchain and to ensure transparency and traceability of the supply chain, whether it's agriculture or textile or related industries, it will become absolutely unavoidable to employ these technologies. So these are some of the things that I want to just put it out there that we're cognizant about. And these are some of the things that we're working on, but it's going to be impossible for us to move forward without the input of experts like yourselves. And I'm grateful to Dr. Abid Sulhairi Saab over here for convening and regularly convening meetups and conferences and seminars like these that help us as public sector entities to really interact with the experts and get that information, get that that expertise, and to understand better in order to make more informed policies, more informed decisions when it comes to the public sector. And Dr. Ishrat and I were just speaking while sitting here that for the first time in Pakistan, for example, Ministry of IT, and I'm grateful to the Prime Minister for this, and the Ministry of the Establishment Ministry, that we have a private sector federal secretary within Ministry of IT, coming from a technical background, and we also have a special secretary who's an expert in management and in public sector affairs, but then also a federal secretary to augment with his expertise when it comes to a technical subject like information technology and telecom. So you can see that there is a shift, overall shift in mindset, overall push, overall commitment to bring about the change that is required. There's a paradigm shift globally when you talk about economy, when you talk about any sector, agriculture being one of them, in terms of how things have been run conventionally and how they will be moving towards technology now. And last but not the least is the human resource that has to stand behind it. With this technological, with this paradigm shift and everything moving towards technology, what is the future of human resource that we have right now? What is our readiness to adapt to those changes? It's not that the jobs will be lost, it's just that the jobs will be replaced. But are we ready for that replacement? Are our people ready for that replacement? If our conventional farming is to move towards mechanized farming, are our people really ready to use blockchain? Are they really ready to use agri-tech? Do they understand what precision farming means? That kind of training, that kind of awareness will be absolutely key to making any of this successful. And this is once again where I would request all our international partners to step in with us, to collaborate and bring in that expertise that is required for us to really transform our human resource, to be able to make them to adapt, to make them adapt to these changes that are coming their way at an unprecedented pace at this point in time. So that's the kind of realization that is required. Readiness assessments are required. Future assessments are required. Very interesting short story. Saudi delegation was here a few weeks back, and there was a CEO of one of these leading fast food chains who had accompanied them, and I was asking him about his family. He was just telling me that one of his sons runs the Department of Future within the fast food chain that they run across the world. So the businesses that you see growing and being successful are really focused on what the future is going to look like. And we as a country need to have, I believe, that department that foresees what is coming our way. Because like I said, it's coming at an unprecedented pace, and we really have to keep up pace with these growing, complex technological advancements that are happening across the world in every sector, in every part of our life that we're looking at. With this, I would like to thank everyone who's present here and thank all the experts for their input, and especially for the organizers, SDPI, Dr. Abid, for always engaging us in such productive conversations. And I look forward to hearing and having more candid conversations over the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Saiba. I guess you very tightly brought the private sector into perspective, because I think we were kind of missing that point, especially the debate started with the resource constraints. I guess this is where the public-private partnerships, they can help the government to, to go forward with their agenda of digitalization, even if we have all those different stresses like debt, mounting debt, and lots of other factors like fiscal deficits. So I think on this public-private partnership note, we would like to conclude this this plenary. I think we cannot take questions because we are running short of time. So thank you all for being here, and we look forward to you tomorrow to further interesting panels. Especially we have a plenary coming tomorrow to discuss the very pressing issue of smog. So see you all tomorrow morning, and I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you so much. Dr. Jodanka and Tanveer Saab. Dr. Jodanka, yes, she's still here. So the IT guys will bring you on the main screen so you can be part of the group photograph.